Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Today we are showing you our process for building a leaf shredder / leaf vacuum / leaf collection system. As a disclaimer, this is definitely not a how-to or instructional video. This video is meant for entertainment purposes only. And if you find yourself inspired to start a project like this, please consult a professional, as it's quite a complicated process as well as a dangerous one. We hope you enjoy this time lapse of Chris and his dad building our leaf collection system. And without further ado, let's hop into the video.
I started off the project by cutting out 3 2x2 foot squares out of 3/4 inch plywood. One of these pieces will serve as a template while routing the spiral housing, while the other two will make up the top and bottom for the leaf vac. This will end up being the finished template that is used later on while routing the blower housing channels. The measurements I used are intended for the 14-inch impeller that I just used for the project. Here I am tracing out that design onto the 2x2 plywood that was cut prior. A spiral design is used instead of a circle to direct the flow of air to a desired point of exit and to decrease wind buffering inside the chamber. Now that we have our template cut out, we can use it to route out the design of the spiral onto the top and bottom of the plywood housing pieces. For my own peace of mind, I decided on a double-walled steel metal case to house the blower. I routed out a 3/4 inch wide channel that is approximately 1/4 inch deep. The metal casing itself is made from 20 gauge steel sheet metal that is cut into 6x12 inch rectangles. I used Loctite construction adhesive and wooden spacers to hold the sheet metal into place while working out the form of the case. Sheet metal pieces are held to one another using pop rivets, with the smooth side of the rivets facing the inside of the fan assembly. The metal was overlapped in direction of airflow through the system so that the air would be less likely to enter voids between the metal pieces. I continue to use the adhesive and screw the spacers into place all around the metal casing until it conforms to the routed channel. I was careful to keep the walls of the casing at a true 90 degrees from the top of the housing in order to decrease the amount of turbulence within the system, and to make sure that the two routed halves fit snugly together once it was time to bolt them together. Looking back, I would have liked to have done an acid wash to the metal and put a protective layer or paint over it to lessen the wear and tear over time. With the first layer of metal casing complete, the inside gets a bead of adhesive to fill any potential voids between the metal and the plywood. With the top half of the case complete, I decided to route out the bottom half using the stencil flipped upside down to form a negative. With the bottom plywood piece now routed, I returned to the top half and started to work on the outer wall of the metal casing. The two walls of the casing are supported with upright wooden spacers and secured together with Loctite adhesive and latch screws on the outside perimeter. In hindsight, joined pieces of metal should have a staggered joint between the inner and outer layer as to not create a coinciding seam and potential weak zone in case of single wall failure. With the walls done, a hole was drilled for the engine's crankshaft to enter the vacuum casing. I chose to make the hole 1/2 inch total diameter in excess of the impeller mount diameter. The dry fit of the Craftsman 6.75 horsepower engine was used to determine the orientation and spacing of the engine mount. I chose to fill the voids between the casings with expanding foam to decrease noise and aid in absorbing and evenly distributing energy from debris striking the metal wall. This is more of a science experiment. I'm not sure if it actually made a difference, but it seemed like it's worth a try. There were some voids left where I assumed there wasn't enough oxygen for the reaction to take place. I plan on filling these voids with the same method at a later date. Next, I needed to create a spacer between the plywood casing top and the engine to create a desired 1/2 inch clearance between the impeller blades and the wall of the casing. I chose a 6-inch HVAC duct fitting with the flange to act as the intake for the system. When planning the build, it took a while to find an impeller that fit the crankshaft of an available mower engine. The one I ended up using is a 1-inch keyed bore. Now that the dry fit was a success and the engine and impeller are mounted, the two halves of the vacuum case need to be bolted together. The carriage bolts are spaced equally apart from one another at 45-degree radial intervals from the center of the impeller. I then needed to remove excess material from the plywood case to form a discharge chute for the leaves to exit into my trailer. Using an oscillating tool and chisel, a channel was made to receive the vacuum assembly onto the trailer. Weighing over 50 pounds, the vacuum needed supports to be mounted onto the trailer to hold its weight. carriage bolts with lock washers were used to secure the vacuum to the trailer mount. I used weather stripping to create an airtight seal between the duct and the vacuum case. Here we are cutting the AgriFab deck adapter to size. The final step was to connect the 6-inch flexible hosing to the deck adapter and leaf vac intake. I stapled an old tarp to the trailer to keep most of the leaves from blowing out the top of the trailer. Didn't do a great job, I was in a little bit of a hurry, and in the future I'll be replacing the tarp with a wooden lid that has a small screen or wire mesh exhaust hole. At this point it was mid-December and I was very eager to test the machine and get some work done on the yard. As with any project, it took a lot longer than was expected, but it was extremely satisfying to use. The leaves had been sitting on the ground for months at this point, and were still wet on the underside. I was surprised to see how well the vacuum was able to handle the challenge of pulling up the wet leaves. The combination of mower blades and metal impeller blades partially mulched the leaves and grass, which would be great for use in compost. And it actually packed it in pretty tight. Here is a general price breakdown of the leaf vac that I built. Most leaf vac systems I looked at had prices starting around $1,200. This price does not include the trailer that I had previously built. However, the trailer I use has over twice the amount of storage space for leaves. And the final price of the system with trailer included ended up being about less than half of its commercial counterpart. I failed at documenting the rest of the yard, as Christmas was 2 weeks away and I was fighting against the weather to get the job done, but this is a small example of the before and after of using the vacuum. The vacuum made quick work of the yard and provided mulch for our soon-to-be garden that would be planted next year. Take it easy. Come on, muscles. Ready? Mm-hmm. Oh, it does move. That's terrifying.